All right, so we are somewhere in between political economy and epistemology, I guess, for the moment. Are there any immediate questions to Evgeny? Can you take the microphone?
Hi. I'd like to ask you to clarify a bit this efficiency problem, because I think that you posed it in a sense that Uber or the Helsinki initiative works according to the same logic in a way, right? Using the same technologies. I wanna ask you where you draw the line here exactly, and how you consider this different regime of governing ourselves.
Sure. I mean, to me, the Helsinki initiative is pretty simple. You have an app on your phone, and you indicate where you are and where you want to go, and the system presents you with waiting time when, you know, a minivan can pick you up along with other passengers and take you where you want to go, and it presents you with other possible options using public transportation, how you can get to a different place. For me, like, ideally, if you were to abstract from, you know, and forget the current neoliberal capitalist climate in which we're living, if I were to design a system of public transportation under sort of ideal conditions, yeah, I would probably build it something like that. I mean, there is, again, at the city level, it makes perfect sense. I mean, I don't think that forcing us to go to the same bus stop has any political or aesthetic value to it. I mean, I'm all for personalization and flexibility that you can get with the systems, but you should not expect those systems to operate only on the logic of Uber, which is, you know, 1 car per passenger or 2 cars per two passengers per car. I mean, that's it. It's not a system that seeks to empower you, the sort of citizen, you know, with like an app designed by Uber will never tell you, well, perhaps, you know, you should walk because there is a nice farmer's market somewhere in the next street and you'll actually, you know, discover something new. I mean, it's not in Uber's interest. If you actually control the data, you know, I can easily, as a citizen and as a community, I can easily imagine you being presented with that option. You're not seeing it today for the sole reason that there is no money to be made there, right? But I do think that, you know, we have to start thinking along those lines. I mean, I'm not going to endorse any kind of technophobic vision here where we should sort of step aside from the world of sensors, big data, and algorithms. I mean, as a possibility, there is, if you were to move to a different post-capitalist, communist, however you want to call it, regime, there is no way you're going to run it without sensors or big data or algorithms, either at the level of planning or at the level of social organization or the level of provision of this transportation service. It's just it's not going to happen, right? So, I mean, having said that, the question then should be, you know, how do you get to that regime? And clearly, you do not get there by experimenting with algorithms or revealing the bankruptcy of the big data paradigm. I mean, it's not going to get you there because it's not just the big data paradigm that's empty, it's the entire paradigm under which we live that's empty, and I would rather be revealing that. Because I think that's what wins elections. It's not finding faults with how corporations think about databases.
Okay. I think I'll give a chance to respond to Antoinette and to Matteo.
Thank you. Just in response to what you just said, first, two responses. Well, I sympathize with the whole vision, of course, but I think the success of big data, I would say popular success of big data is a symptom of the crisis of representation and of political representation as such. So how to solve this? That's the first question. You can call to politics and things like that, but it's the crisis of politics as representation that makes the success of big data, and the reason why even lawyers want to use big data or judges want to use big data in order to not to have to decide and take the responsibility by themselves for the decision. So that's the first question. And the second question is about your plea for more control over the data. But for all we have spoken about, we spoke about data mining, and you can be profiled with the data of your neighbors, and your neighbors' data are as good as your own in order to profile you. The data miners don't need your own data to profile you. you know. So therefore, well, the law is completely wrong when focusing and over-fetishizing the personal data and personal control over data. This is just an increase of individualization and individualism. It's not a solution, and it's not a technical solution for the reason that you can be perfectly profiled without having abandoned any of your own data. Well, so I still think that, well, big data is there. Huh? It's magic thinking that we will, because we want to, we will get rid of it. I think it's just, that's magic thinking. So there are reasons why even if we don't like them, and I don't like that at all, I don't like that, but I think we should also think about practical ways of rendering these systems more accountable, more transparent, more fair, if you say, if I can say so. Just saying, okay, we have to get out of capitalism, I agree with that. And we should do that as well. But it does not dispense us from thinking seriously about what kind of shifts happen with big data and how algorithms work, how do they work, and to open these black boxes. There are ways to audit algorithms that have been thought about by geeks, trying to make algorithms reveal, for example, the subtle indirect discriminations that they produce and things like that. I think these solutions should not, or this effort should not just be put away for the reason that, well, we would like to live in another society.
Can I just clarify? I didn't say the word control. I said the word ownership, which is very different. I don't believe in this liberal... No, it's not. No. Again, because you're reducing data to a commodity. I specifically said it's not going to be treated as a commodity. And, you know, when you own something, it does not have to be an asset. This is the idea of communism, what it's about. Sorry. It's common ownership. No. It does change a lot of things. It's not the liberal idea of owning a commodity and then controlling who gets access to control. No. This is not what I've said.
Even if others don't have access to your data because you own there or you are proprietor, never mind the status of your relationship with your data. Even if they don't get your data, even if you control or own it or whatever you want, it won't change the thing. It won't change anything to the fact that without, if you keep them sealed in your own computer with a lot of firewalls and all protections, it doesn't change the fact that you will be profiled even if you don't.
Sure. I'll tell you what it changed. It will change the fact that Uber is valued at $40 billion. It will change it momentarily. Because they don't own anything else other than an algorithm and maybe a few hundred employees.
Yeah, I don't see how it changed things, but maybe.
Matteo? Yeah, I don't know what, yeah. I'm happy I'm back, and my favorite topic is like how to organize election as a left-wing party and win possibly. The thing, there are two ways to criticize capitalism, a right-wing way, a left-wing way. There is a way that's like, you know, dismissing all the theory and the knowledge we produce, and the way we want to keep the theory and the knowledge connected to the struggles. What I would like to go back to the theme of this festival instead of make simple statement about the poor Tsipras that has to do all the work by himself, and now everything is resolved. What I liked about the idea of the algorithm today as a concept is precisely what's behind that, division of labor. And why the theme of this festival is timely is because for the first time, probably, all the friends we had dealing with logistics, division of labor, automation in the real productive part of this world, now they have a kind of common ground and can discuss with the digital artists, hackers, and so on and so on. Or people that precisely hackers have been dealing with surveillance system in the last year. So I found this idea of algorithm precisely what really means. That is the division of labor in today's society. And this is interesting to see how the idea of division of labor by Marx was inspired by Charles Babbage, who was one of the founder, let's say, of computation. He was like, one of the father of the first machine. So the point for me would be precisely, I totally agree with Morozov that what's behind everything is the problem of capitalism, but it's the way we discussed it today. And it's the fact that today there are big The other issue, with my Italian friends, with my autonomist Marxist friends, we have been discussed many times precisely how to, how to seize the power maybe, how to produce a proper, effective revolution. But what is striking to me today, and that's the fact that we had this incredible social unrest, a proper form of political composition, happen in very extreme situation like in Greece or in Spain, not in other parts of Europe. But what is interesting for me is also the fact that today, despite of the financial crisis, despite of the fact that millions of people are completely trapped into what's the debt governance, there are not many examples of a proper form of, let's say, disagreement, revolt, so to speak. So I see today gigantic form of governance that for instance, even through digital media or any other form of governance through cultural idea and new meme. To give a few examples, if you want to talk about algorithm, for me what's important is precisely the global scale, the scale of capital and not the scale of small gadget. Sometimes they vehiculate a capitalist economy. I don't want to talk here about the economy of social networks, the economy of Google, because probably this has been discussed in many cases. But for instance, since in the last years, the sector of logistics, like other people here at this festival probably will cover, the sector of logistics has been the sector that has been absorbing more labor power than any other sector, especially in Asia. And this is due to the implementation of software. One of the software, by the way, is developed by, it's right here in Germany, I don't mention the name. So logistics went through a radical, it's called containerization and also digitalization of the whole management, of the whole networks. And here you see an incredible effect of, let's say, algorithm software, name as you like. It's like on the division of labor and distribution of forces and migrants and people that move from one other side of the world. This is the scale of politics we should discuss. Second, the surveillance networks of NSA, of intelligence agency that precisely are implementing all this incredible computational power, and this is being covered by this festival very well. There is another example very crucial also for the cultural agenda of this institution, the Haus der Kulturen der Welt. This is climate science. We had a few months ago the Anthropocene curriculum here. One of the guests was Paul Edwards. There was a fantastic book called A Vast Machine. A Vast Machine describes very well how today we talk about climate change and maybe we act as activists within the climate change paradigm because we have a global network of sensors. We have a global network of mathematicians, institutions, data centers that can produce, they can measure at the end what's the final, let's say, temperature move of the whole planet. And this as an agenda has an incredible political impact. I'm pretty critical about what's the real agenda behind this sort of framework, what's the real relation with the capitalist critique. And then we can, I don't know, enter even the dimension, the proper dimension of financial market, financial governance, and to see precisely how the last financial crisis has been vehiculated, the last debit governance has been vehiculated by a strong implementation of, let's say, sensor device algorithm able to suck and to incarnate debt in our everyday life.
I think it's high time for the audience to Pete.
Hello. Yesterday we had a nice discussion about alternative utopias, let's say leftist science fiction. And when you describe the algorithm, you always describe it in the context of capitalism. Do you think also in the, let's say, regarding to economic theory and simulation and computation in economic theory, you have game theory, and there's an area of Marxism which is called analytic Marxism, which used like simulation models to basically algorithmically apply, let's say, big data models to regulate an economy. Do you think there's a kind of accelerationist, let's say utopian, fictional at least, option to envision an algorithmic leftist alternative to the capitalist algorithmic power or governance?
Yeah, Pete, thanks. Morozov wrote recently this piece about cyber scene. But I would like to start again maybe to develop some idea for the poor Tsipras that now got the power and has to deal with many important economic issues. In revolutionary cybernetic, in the Soviet cybernetic, in what Pete was referring to, science fiction politics of any kind, and in the project Cyber Scene that was developed by Allende in the 70s, they had this serious problem of the centrality of the cybernetic apparatus that was supposed to help to plan the economy. Maybe Morozov they can tell you other stories about this, but this is for me a crucial issue because there is of course this example of the revolutionary cybernetics of the Cyber Scene project that can be taken as one of the examples how any form of implementation of technology, modeling, mathematics is like destined to fail. On the other side, however, there is not one cybernetics, there is not one kind of way to design algorithm, computer science, and so on. And there can be many different ways to develop this. This is a crucial thing, I don't know if you have time to go into, because it's connected to some theoretic, some important ideas of economic theory, like the signal price problem and the whole problem of, the collapse also of any kind of centralized economic regime. But for me, for sure, there is like potential future of inventing a new form of precisely measuring the economy through digital media, digital models, like the poor Tsipras probably will have to do in the next years to plan a new form of economy.
So I think much depends on what kind of political vision underpins the utopia that you're talking about. So if you were to think of a non-capitalist utopia, I think the two visions that come to mind immediately would be either you go back to some kind of hyper active and extremely quick and fast central planning, whereby thanks to proliferation of sensors in factories and everywhere, data that will be fed into the planning machine, so to say, would be collected much faster and at a much greater scale, and thus the production matrices will be updated in real time as opposed to 5 years, as was the case at the Soviet Union, which, by the way, was a possibility that was considered in the Soviet Union itself, and which was tied to a lot of cybernetic work that was happening in the Soviet Union, and ultimately it emerges out of the big debate, the socialist calculation debate, which we can argue who won it, but if you look at the very last intervention that the Polish economist Oskar Lange made, who was the key opponent of Hayek in this debate, his point was precisely that it's not just computing, it's not just the ability to crunch a lot of numbers in a computer that's going to help us with better planning, it's the ability to collect and update data in real time. So it was not just the computing apparatus, it was the merger of the computing apparatus with the cybernetic apparatus, the ability to update and collect data in real time, that for him was the key to having a model of social organization that will rely on planning and will be different to the capitalist one. Or the second vision that does not rely on central planning that much would be some kind of, commune of communes, some kind of libertarian social ecology a la Murray Bookchin, where instead of having a central plan, you'll just have communities that are much smaller and can self-manage and eventually coordinate at some higher level, which again would require a very strong and up-to-date real-time communication cybernetic infrastructure. It just wouldn't result in a central plan for the entire unit. But both of them, to me, would presuppose a degree of computerization and the degree of almost ubiquity of sensors in the environment. And the first tradition that is much closer to the the communist one has many more examples, or at least attempts to theorize it. If you look at the literature in the 50s and 60s, you'll find plenty of people trying to build on Lange and a few others up until now. I mean, every 10 years somebody publishes an article arguing that we need to reopen the socialist calculation debate because the computing environment has changed and we can suddenly prove that Hayek was wrong. So, 15 years ago, that argument was made with the microchip. Now it's made with the Internet of Things. In 10 years' time, it will be made with something else. And I think it's a debate that is not worth, it's worth having. I don't think we should lose it, and that I find it very productive.
Briefly.
Yes, as for the utopia, there is a very interesting tension, I think, between the notion of real-time adaptation to whatever surfaces in the world, real-time adaptation of algorithms themselves, and the notion of utopia. Utopia can be and has been in literature, has been defined as a kind of revolt of possibility by comparison to the existing, revolt of possible over the existence. And this means that utopia should not have a status as hypothesis in awaiting of realization. It means that instead there is always a tension between distance of utopia from reality and the realization of utopia, which can only be a regulatory horizon, but should not be realized. If not, it loses its utopia. And what we are caught in here is the absorption of all temporality in real time. We should realize that the digital memory does not make sense, the notion of memory, because there is no history at all, no duration. Real time has replaced duration. So the past and the future are already present in profiles, in preemptive profiles. So you see, the notion of utopia is maybe impossible to mobilize in the context of what I have called algorithmic governmentality. For that reason, it's impossible also because utopia presupposes some kinds of imagination. But nowadays, we are almost ready to transfer to machines the task of imagining our future. So I think, well, we should rethink the tension between utopia and what we have entered in at the moment.
There's a question, Tommy?
Yeah, technological personalization obviously doesn't work perfectly. A thought to the attitude that speaking of the ontology of technological questions such as big data and algorithm does not matter in a political debate. Well, I think if one wants to understand the configuration of contemporary capitalism, one only needs to look at the fact that some of the largest global corporations work with algorithms and big data. That is the foundation of their business model in many ways. And it is fundamentally tied to how contemporary capitalism works and why technology develops in the specific ways that contemporary capitalism requires. Because not all big data is mined the same. There are requirements that contemporary capitalism has in order to sustain itself. One is definitely monopoly power in the markets, and big data and algorithms have certainly helped that. The other one is realization of invested capital, which mostly happens through advertising, at least what concerns consumer consumption. So in that sense, big data for advertising is fundamental. And it also includes a certain form of expansion of processes of commodification, which is what inventions in terms of algorithms and big data have done. Now, how that relates to the debate of political transformation? Well, the problem is that once you even seize political power, you gain power in the state. In contemporary conjuncture, you still have to maintain the economy, which is very much a monopolist capitalist economy, and it is those sectors that drive the profitability that in a way keeps the cycle of investment going. And that is exactly why economic policies have become neoliberalist. They haven't become simply because somebody has decided so. It's not simply the decision of 1% that they want the economy structured that way. It is, in many ways, also that, because these large companies do have huge lobbying and then converts into real political power, but also sustaining the economy that allows the state to tax is a real and fundamental question of the contemporary capitalism. So I think those questions are very much attached and have really, or come to the fore once you seize the power.
Okay, that would have already been almost a kind of closing statement, how the different positions are related to one another. But if there are no immediate kind of questions and we have like a minute or two left, I would give it to our panelists if they would like to do their own.
Moderator.
Well, as far as we have been concerned, and all concerned, I think, with what change could we make to the issues, I think one of the biggest difficulty I feel with regard to these systems, and indeed I agree that big data, algorithmic governmentality is a symptom of acceleration of capitalism and increase of intensification of capitalism and neoliberalism. Even it fragments even the subjects and puts subjects or individuals in competition at a molecular level with each other. But what we would need is an event that changed something, like an electroshock. But it's difficult to imagine. An event is difficult to imagine. It's in algorithmic governmentality. Why? Because each time someone disobeys a profile, for example, or each time the reality makes the modelization of reality lie, this event or this disobedience is immediately fragmented in a myriad of data which are reaggregated with other data in other which have been collected in other contexts, making the event as event just disappear in the flow. And I think what we experience is just an immune system of flows, flows which are meaningless, worthless, but it's a kind of normative metabolism that has become somewhat crazy, I think. And realizing that it's crazy is a first step, maybe, towards imagining something else.
Say something. Well, unlike Antoinette, I have no problem imagining us living under algorithmic governance, because I think we've been living under it for quite some time already. Here I just want to remind you of the way in which Friedrich Hayek, actually, towards the end of his career, completely recast his entire theory in the language of science and cybernetics, calling the invisible hand and the market the ultimate cybernetic device ever built, and Adam Smith's the first ever cybernetician. In that sense, I don't actually think that there is anything contradictory in extending the market paradigm into our everyday life under the guise of sensors, algorithms, and big data. And I think this is ultimately where things would go as we're encouraged to collect and sell our own data. I mean, to me, ultimately, this is what it's all about. It's making sure that we become compliant subjects of the global marketplace and we are trading in the data that we generate. But again, I just want to close by reminding you that as exciting as it might be for us to keep our eyes very close to technology, algorithms, and big data, we should not fall under the illusion that they explain even 10% of what's happening. And I think we would be far better off trying to understand the structural changes in the financial capitalism of the last 30 years than we would trying to understand algorithms and big data. As much as I would love us to understand both, I just think that the explanatory power probably rests with us looking closely at what has happened with financialization than at what has happened with digitalization, or however you want to call it. So, I mean, that's just me reflecting on the hazards of thinking about technology way too often.
I guess probably the common position we share, all of us, is this idea that the technosphere cannot be autonomous, that precisely the technosphere, name as you like, could be big data, small data, the social network society, metadata society, is something shaped by political forces, social forces, that any form, any diagram, any algorithm, at the end, is like completely, is a diagram of social forces and conflict. So this idea that probably we have to look at what are the forces behind this kind of mathematical surface.
Yeah. I think one of the questions that then comes out is where there are venues to act within these forces. And I think this is ultimately also a somewhat personal question. I don't think there is the one layer that we can act on that, you know, finally when we storm the Winter Palace in Frankfurt, we will seize power and rectify it. I think this is really a complex question of how these different modalities shape each other and which you could use in order to shape the other in a direction that is perhaps not set up in that way. So this for me is really very much one of the kind of the themes that runs through it and runs through the conference of how these political modalities, even if it is a continuation of capitalism, is precisely and profoundly shaped by algorithms and is a different form of capitalism and requires, perhaps we will see what happens in Greece now, or whether someone is actually going to storm the central bank in Frankfurt in their new tower. Where is the layers or the layers that we have to act on simultaneously, most likely, rather than on one versus the other. But this, again, is a question that we leave you with. Thank you.